Well, welcome back to Love, Money, Rock and Roll, where we have left off with Himisu showing up at our house after a bunch of terrible rumors and me suspecting that she is the one who kidnapped Ellie. Let's get into it. Good evening, Iwamura-senpai. Good evening. You see, it just so happened that her house burned down, so I'm letting her and her grandfather stay at my place. Until they decide to do what to do next. Is that right? Right. If you need anything, I'm happy to help. We have all the help we need, I think. Yes, there was another girl in my house and it wasn't even Catherine. Yeah, my explanation sounded weird. She probably took it as, at best, a half-truth. I'm sorry that your house burned down. Thank you. I've known Nico my entire life. He might be unbearable at times, but he's generally a good person. Thanks for the compliment. I'll try to remember that. Well, if you need anything, you know where to find me. Once Himitsu was gone, I felt relieved. Very nice of her to drop by and check on you. I'm just surprised she didn't so earlier. Well, Himitsu, you see, I can't say it's easy for her to see me in your house. Kiyomi finished my thought. Well, yeah. Does she have feelings for you? I don't want to discuss my relationship with her. We're just friends. You feel guilty. Why would I? Because you also have feelings for her? As I recalled, you're a future economics student, yet you're acting like an amateur psychologist. Alright, sorry, it really isn't any of my business. Kagome smiled consolatory. By the way, how is that foreign girl in our class doing? Catherine, what about her? Well, she demonstratively rolled her eyes. Actually, I really didn't know how she was doing. Maybe she was on a date with Michael. Maybe she was already in his bed. Nikolai, you seem to be enjoying an inexplicable popularity with the girls of our school. Oh, Catherine couldn't care less about me, believe me. If you say so. She already found a new suitor. I'm not insisting you tell me, it's just to keep the conversation going. You know what, Kagome-san, I can deal with all that myself. I hope you haven't left a spot for me in your harem. What the? I'm very grateful for your help, Nikolai, but not that grateful. Yeah, whatever. Kagome's jokes stung more than they should have. You're so serious today. One of us has to be. I guess. I spent the rest of the evening with a book in my hands and no idea what Kagome did. When I walked to the room to say goodnight, the lights were already off. Another crazy day was over. I went to get in my bed and closed my eyes. Yet I was tortured by the feeling of something left unsaid or undone. As if I had left a theater in the middle of a performance. Ellie, her grandfather, Arina Kagome, her grandfather, Himitsu, Catherine. All the actors had stayed to finish the play, the finale of which I was destined not to see. Loading. 23/09/1987. Nikolai, wake up. I heard somebody persistent voice in my dream. We'll be late for school. Sunshine, just 5 more minutes. I opened my eyes and instead of Himitsu, I saw Kagome leaning over me. Oh, it's you. Disappointed? A little. What time is it? Late enough to not make it to school on time. She kept standing there like she was waiting for something. Well, what? Maybe you'll let me get dressed? Oh, yeah, sorry. Kagome blushed and ran out of my room. We ate a quick breakfast and left for school. Yeah, it's not good to be calling out someone's name like that. And then, not get the response you want. I was trying to wake you up for an hour. Get used to it. I scoffed. Thank goodness I won't need to tolerate it for long. Her words somehow stung me, like an old friend had just told me they were moving abroad forever. Oh wait. What? Did you hope you found a free cook? Guess I did. I said bitterly in response and picked up my pace. We split up closer to school and I had to stand and wait for Kagome to move ahead. Our classroom was in turmoil. Everyone was broken into small groups, fiercely discussing something. Only Kagome sat alone. Michael approached. Have you heard what happened, Nick? What? Kobayashi Ellie was kidnapped. Kidnapped? By who? They say Asakura had a hand on it. Asakura? I exclaimed. Michael squinted and tilted his head strangely. It's like you're not surprised she was kidnapped at all. Why, of course, because it's me keeping Ellie hostage in my basement. Michael, seriously, I'm serious. Fine, what are they saying? They say Asakura and a girl from Kobayashi's class. Kawashima. Yeah, seems like they had an argument about something. An argument, I smirked. Either way, they've been detained or now being interrogated at the police station. Where did the information come from? Everyone just knows it. Maybe someone overheard the teachers. What a trustworthy source. I wanted to add something else, but then the bell rang. Probably the KGB. Was Kagome right after all? The situation was developing too rapidly. Plus, if I were to look at them, they'd gone from smearing swear words on my door, breaking a window, to setting a restaurant on fire and kidnapping people. On the other hand, I had no reason to defend them. And no desire, most importantly. Except that if they were actually innocent, imprisoning them wouldn't help find Ellie. During the break, I nodded at Kagome, indicating that I wanted to talk. I didn't want to go to the roof today, so I brought it to the old school wing. After all, today, we certainly weren't going to bump into Ellie here. Well, happy now? I am, and I'm not going to hide it. She grinned and looked in my eyes in a way I found embarrassing. I really like that smirk. It reminds me of Dante from Devil May Cry. What if they have nothing to do with it? What matters is finding Ellie, not getting revenge. Personally, I'm not too worried about what happens to her. Right, what am I saying? Nikolai, don't tell me you pity them. If they're innocent. Even if they have nothing to do with Kobayashi's kidnapping, it was definitely them who burned down my restaurant. Well, if that's what you believe, don't you? It just seems to me that things are getting too intense too quickly. First vandalism, then arson, now kidnapping. I'm willing to admit at least Kawashima isn't an idiot. Isn't this a little too much? Besides, they basically worshipped Ellie and they had something to lose. Do you think they know what loss is? Kagome scoffed with disdain. I don't think they were burning with desire to find out. Sounds like you're defending them. I'm not defending anyone. I just want to learn the truth and rescue Ellie. You seem to be concerned about her. If something happens to the granddaughter of the head of the Kobayashi Corporation, we might all be found guilty. You haven't forgotten that I was in his office just recently, right? Is that the only reason? The only reason. I flung my arms up and stepped away from Kagome, demonstrating my extreme disappointment and her lack of forethought. I'm planning to make it to graduation. And if I remember right, you were going to get into a university too. But there's no one to blame on it. There's no blame on us for Kobayashi's disappearance, so what should we be afraid of? Are you sure there isn't? Well then why don't you take me to the police? Would that make you feel better? Kagome got predictably mad. I said we, not you. Maybe I kidnapped her and I have amnesia and don't remember. I don't know about amnesia, but you definitely have amnesia. She prepared to leave and suddenly stopped. Right. I need to go to the police station after school. I'm telling you now so I won't complain about my absence later. What for? For my restaurant. Remember? The world doesn't revolve around your Kobayashi. Why around my... But Kagome wasn't listening and quickly walked in the direction of our classroom. Every long fall is inevitably followed by a rise. Had we reached the lowest point in our graph? I was walking home, constantly looking around, and noticed no one following me. If Himitsu hasn't done anything, then apparently Kagome is a yandere. I mean, either way, something's wrong with this. What's going on? Children, I smirked inside. What else would I call them? Teenagers? Well, that didn't change much. Children can be far more cruel than adults, because they can't distinguish between good and evil. In the words of Sundowner, I like minors. Oh man. Metal Gear Rising's hilarious. When they were children, did anyone bother to explain to Kawashima and Ko how they were supposed to behave? But the matter with Ellie was still unresolved. I could imagine them kidnapping Kagome, but it didn't appear like they had any problems with their leader. Murasaki was watching a meaningless TV show and was happy to see me back. Good afternoon, Nikolai. Maybe, I can't remember. Alright. I had to make lunch, but as soon as I opened the fridge, the door opened. or a doorbell ring. According to chaos theory, anyone could be standing at my doorstep, from Himitsu to the Prime Minister of Japan. That's an understatement. And it was just Arena. Ah, so good to find you home. First, you knew I was home. Second, isn't it dangerous to show up my front door in the middle of the day? Don't worry, you aren't under surveillance anymore. Thank goodness. I said without irony, will you invite me in? If I'm not being watched, we can talk outside. More Yukis in the home. Oh, we already know each other. Arena exclaimed cheerfully, and yet, as you wish, she frowned. We walked to the road. I leaned against the fence and crossed my arms over my chest. You must have heard that the police detained several students from your school. I have. Do you believe us now? How would I put it? I never noticed how cozy your neighborhood is. What? Irina thought for a moment, then replied in a serious tone. I don't know what kind of relationship you have at school, but those kids are just kids. They wouldn't be able to kidnap Kobayashi Ellie while their guards were watching. And we have no information that any kind, let's say, clash took place. So you don't believe they're involved either? Either. A school friend was doubting that too. A friend, huh? Is that all? Nikolai, it feels like you're interrogating me. You also shouldn't forget that most of the kids that go to your school aren't from normal families. If you want my opinion, I think they were framed. By who? Oh, I don't have all the answers. But at least you don't suspect me anymore, right? You can suspect a criminal. If you really had been the one who kidnapped Kobayashi Ellie, you'd be a hero to us. In any case, it seems like it must have been someone outside the system, and if you know anyone like that, I suggest you take a very close look at them. Why does it sound like you're hinting at someone in particular? And who would that be? Say, Iwamura. Even if I wanted it to be your friend. And why would you? Because then we'd know about the whereabouts of Kobayashi Ellie. Do you want to know? Yeah, we can't abandon a poor girl in trouble. Yeah, sure. I repeat, even if I wanted it to be your friend, I don't think she'd be able to pull it off. You just don't know Kagome. Do you want me to tell something important about her? No, nothing really. Fine then. We'll keep in touch, don't disappear. Where would I anyway? I grumbled after she left. Kagome returned from her visit with the police in the evening. It's as quiet as a graveyard in here. I was waiting for you. Well, here I am. Nobody started dinner yet, I assume? I was waiting for you. I repeated in the same gloomy tone. Nikolai, I told you I'd go to the police. And how did it go? Nothing definitive yet. Nothing at all. Well, they believe it was arson. No one in the neighborhood provided any useful information. No one saw or heard anything. I still had to tell about Arena. The woman from KGB came today. They said we're no longer under surveillance. That's great news. But she thinks Kawashima's gang was framed. She doesn't know. Do you agree with her? She's got a point. It'd be stupid to ignore it. Why would you believe that woman? Because she's your compatriot? I could hear how annoying she was. Apparently, Kagome really wanted to see them behind bars. So far her information has been accurate. And what? Has she told you anything particularly sensational? Well, for example, some information regarding my parents' death. I thought you already suspected something. That's different. Are you saying that she's pretending to be a KGB major? That's even stupider than... Do you have any proof she is who she says she is? Well, she's Russian to start with. Do all Russians work for the KGB? Who would she work for then? I don't know. I decided not to react. Iwamura was clearly hinting at Kobayashi Corporation. But if that was the case, the whole situation was becoming far too complicated. And not only because I was a student who knew nothing and posed no threat to anyone, but just in general, from an ontological viewpoint, so to say. Do you know what Occam's razor is? No, but I think you're about to tell me. Call me when dinner's ready. I snapped at her, grabbed my book, and left for my room. The rest of the day was peaceful. I didn't want any more pointless conversations with Kagome, and we only saw each other again at dinner. They usually went to bed earlier than me, so I kept reading in bed for a while, enjoying the silence of the house that was becoming more and more rare with each day. Finally, my eyes closed and I fell asleep. It's still nighttime. I was woken by a noise in the yard, a familiar one. It took me a moment to realize who it was. When I came to my senses, the sounds of the night grew undisturbed once again, but I knew someone wanted to leave the house unseen. Unless Moriyuki-san was a sleepwalker, it could only be. If I had been a minute late, she would have disappeared into the endless labyrinth of alleys under the cover of darkness. She was holding a bag. Wherever Iwamura was headed, she walked quickly and confidently. We continued like down till we reached the station, where she looked around, but I managed to hide in the shadow of some trees. Then Kagome passed the turnstiles and walked onto the platform. There were still trains going that late. I didn't have my wallet on me, but the ticket inspector was peacefully sleeping at his post, so I managed to jump over to the turnstile unnoticed. Soon enough, a completely train did in fact arrive. Maybe it was some kind of overnight service to the depot? The trip took a while. I took one car away from Kagome, lying down on a seat in an uncomfortable position to make sure I couldn't be seen. She spent the entire time sitting motionless, tensely staring out somewhere in front of her. Then finally, at one of the stations close to the outskirts, Kagome apparently got up and left the carriage so quickly that I barely managed to jump out of mine. We were in a seaside district built up with warehouses. Kagome walked forward, confidently making our way through the eerie gloom and the endless rows of identical-looking buildings. I was getting more and more uneasy by the minute, not even because I was in an unfamiliar place in the middle of the night, but because the girl I was following didn't seem to be afraid of anything at all. Not everyone would want to be unwittingly spy on a maniac while he satisfies his perverted desires. Maybe she is crazy. How could she tell them apart? She slid a door up and walked inside. I realized there was no bag back and I had to follow her. If you exclude all that, it's impossible. What remains is true. Kagome sneaks out of the house at night while everyone's asleep and goes to the outskirts of the city to sneak into some warehouse. Maybe this impacts the inflation rate, but... inside I found Ellie, tied up with Iwamura standing over her. So it was you after all. Ellie raised her head and blindly stared into the darkness. Nick, is it you? And then a louder voice. Help. The girl was looking at me and grinning. Welcome, Nikolai. I'd have to be blind not to notice you tailing me, so you know. Of course, it'd be stupid to live with you in the same house and hope you wouldn't notice me disappearing at night. And we better sort this out now, on my terms. She's crazy. I took a step forward and Kagome was hovering over Ellie like Cerebus, refusing to let her return to the world of the living. Nick, hurry. What's the matter? Won't you save her princess? Except that the person in my shoes turned out to be me, and I had no one to ask for help. Hollow. I may be on a bad end. Oh well, the music's really nice. Why did you do it? Asked the kidnapper. Do you really not understand? How else can I make them release my father? Even if they would, do you think you'll just get away with it? I don't think I have much of a choice. I heard the note of desperation in Ellie's voice. I realized I had to make a decision. The sooner the better. Please understand that if you let her go now, we're both doomed. Kagome said impassively. I promise I won't tell a soul about you. What about her? She deserves to be punished. You see, Nikolai? And you take her word for it? At that moment, I was far more concerned about Kagome than my own safety. Yeah, her actions were hard to justify, but I didn't even want to imagine what I'd do if I were in her shoes. At the same time, she couldn't expect a fair trial. Kobayashi-jun most likely wouldn't just hand Iwamura over to the police. Besides, she was most likely correct. Ellie wouldn't keep her mouth shut, and why would I believe her at all? Right now, she'd say anything to have me free her, but she could easily change her opinion once she was safe. Someone in a situation as extreme as this wasn't going to think too deeply about what they saw. I was with Kagome, her kidnapper, so I was guilty too. Nick, please, Ellie pleaded. I can't stop you even if I wanted to. Showed me your empty hands. I was angry at Kagome for dragging me into the situation one way or another. I always regret myself for not being more cautious. Even at Ellie, for the same thing as me. Deep inside, there was a cowardly wish to run away. Let Kagome deal with her problems herself without involving me. Well, but I was there, I had to make a choice. Follow Kagome's advice. Right now, Ellie was acting on emotion. As soon as she was safe, she'd immediately start talking about everything that happened. One way or another, Kagome would be the primary suspect and then me. Sorry, I need to. I walked outside to catch my breath and sort my thoughts. I needed a break. Well done, Nico, for not acting out an emotion. Your compliments are the last thing I need. You can still release her, she'll be waiting for you. And then what? What then? You realize you put me in a situation where I have no choice. No matter what I do, I'll end up the one to blame. And what are you planning to do next? I've already told you. I'll demand they release my father. I have something to back up that demand. Were you also the one who left the note at Ellie's house? Of course. There's only one problem. Once you demand the release of your father, the list of suspects will narrow down very quickly. That's one thing, then I'm alone. Instead, ask for some secret documents concerning the project. That's clever. I whistled. But only in theory. Kobayashi-Jun may be a monster, but I'm sure his granddaughter's life is more important than anything else. I tried to remember the emotionless, wrinkled face of the old man, but in my memory it didn't have any expression. Was a person capable of such compassion when it was not related to him? Nikolai? I don't know what to think about you now. Well, sorry I haven't met your standards, but my dad's been kidnapped. You have your own truth, Ellie. Or truth, Ellie has her own. I just don't want to be involved in this. But you are, Nikolai, ever since. She stopped, bit her lip, and turned away. Ever since what? Since you let us live at your place. Thanks, I regret it already. But deep inside, I began to realize that Kagome had left me no choice. For Ellie, no matter what she claimed, I was an accomplice now. I still don't like her plan, it's too obvious. Who else would want your father free apart from you and Moriyuki-san? Do you have any other suggestions? You know what? I feel like I just found a bloody shirt and a pistol in my wardrobe and the police are knocking at my door. I won't be able to look her in the eye anymore, not after everything. I feel like a traitor forced to collaborate with the enemy. Except that I did it for my own safety rather than other people's salvation. I guess my portrait wouldn't be hung to Zoya Kozama Dekusaya. Yes, you don't have to do it. Then why am I here? You followed me. And you pretended not to notice. You wanted me to be here for Ellie to see me, maybe. She finally grinned and looked away. Why? Because you probably didn't want it to be just on you if you failed? I gather, right? Come on, don't pretend to be offended now. I'm the victim. She needs food and water. And where do you think I've been going in the evenings? This is just a guess, but you eat more than once a day, don't you? Losses are inevitable in war, but we're not at war. I don't see much of a difference. And how long ago did you plan this? I didn't, if they hadn't burned my restaurant. You got back at them too. If Kobayashi-Jun does the right thing, I interrupted her, do you really think you'll get away with this? Even if your father's released, old man Kobayashi won't tolerate a slight like this. You may be right. But we'll think about that later. I gripped my teeth, rubbed my forehead, surprised to find a splitting headache. I had to make a decision. We can't leave her alone for the night. Then if you want, you can stay and guard her until I return. I'll bring food for 2 people. By the way, we better feed her. If you want. You know what? You start it, you finish it. I had neither the energy nor the will to look Ellie in the eyes. I didn't even know what to do next. As if I was stuck in a superposition between 2 states. I couldn't let her go, but I also couldn't leave things as they were. I couldn't trust Kagame, but I was too afraid to make any decision for myself. I couldn't be with her, but my conscience wouldn't allow me to leave. The indecision was killing me, and I could feel myself drowning while standing on solid ground. You seem anxious. Is that all? Can we go? Of course we can, except... Did you bring your wallet? Trains don't run this late. Had other stuff on my mind. Fine, then I can lend you money for a taxi. If you'd be so kind. Where does she even get that money? Let's sleep, I'm tired. Gumi said once the text left. Tired, are you? I smirked. Wait, I have questions, I can't wait till tomorrow. How did you manage to... You helped me. Me? Well, indirectly, of course. I only had to find an abandoned warehouse where nobody would hear her. You're saying like you went there. Herself, she did. Come on, that's just stupid. For one, I had to do it in a way her guards wouldn't notice. And for two, I'm a girl. I don't have the strength to pull that off. Knocking Kobayashi out with something heavy would be one thing, but dragging her across the city. So I had a simple thought. Who was better at tricking her guards than Kobayashi herself? And then I only had to find the right motivation for Kobayashi to sneak away from her guards and come to the rest that's selected. Of course. I wrote a note in your name and attached a detailed map. I didn't know what surprised me more. Kagome's resourcefulness or Ellie's gullibility. Won't you accuse me of lying? Are you lying? No, then I won't. But you're more surprised that all the bait worked so well. I saw Ellie tied up. What difference does it make how you managed to do it? I'm disappointed. I'm sure you'd have been more surprised. I'm surprised by the fact you turned this into a joke. I'm quite serious when it comes to action, but it seems like we've already figured out who the main villain here is, so now we just have to wait. And who would that be? Me, of course. Akomi proudly pushed her chest out if accepting a reward for finishing a school year with straight A's. You seem proud about it. Trust me, I'm not happy to go so far, but if I'm gonna be a villain, I'm gonna do it right. Considering that innocent people have suffered because of you. Innocent people? I took my revenge on them too. After Kobayashi got your note, I left another one in our mailbox, containing threats supposedly from them. I'm glad you appreciate it. The Japanese are clearly afraid of were creatures for a reason, and to think that just recently I started to believe we had a lot in common, but I couldn't imagine myself kidnapping a person, especially Ellie. Of course, Kagami had a very different opinion of her. It's already late or early. We'd been gone for a few hours, but it felt like several days. Tomorrow. Yeah. I need to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. But I couldn't fall asleep. Instead, lying awake with the nasty feeling where sleep refuses to come, and you know you'll have to lie and wait for an hour until its return, even despite all the exhaustion you've accumulated. So I was sharing my house with a monster. The thought didn't so much terrify me as it caused inexplicable surprise. As if I woke up one morning and suddenly realized I was no longer 18, but rather 48. Half my life was behind me and I hadn't even noticed. How could I not see what she was capable of? If she needed me to sacrifice me for her father's freedom, what would stop her? I couldn't understand why Kagome hated Ellie so much, but the fact she did was in itself alarming. But it wasn't like Kagome was a maniac serial killer. All of her actions followed a careful logic. If she had been a complete stranger to me, I would have been impressed. Ostentatious moralizing and hypocrisy were alien to me. Of course I wasn't a sociopath, but the thought that the ends justified the means crossed my mind more often than it probably had to. And by turning down her offer to play bass for Zed Fields, I'd basically abandoned the life path that would have led to Ellie. Maybe Kagome and I really were accomplices now. Had that been Kagome's goal? Had she succeeded again? I should have felt affronted and cheated, but deep inside I only felt weariness and pity for her. If a person's mentally healthy, only other people or the circumstances of their life can push them to extreme actions. What have I done in her shoes? It was easy to judge from the side, lying in a warm bed, having a bank account of my own, albeit old but decent house. But most importantly, my wish to help her free her father was only growing stronger. But I'd also suffered because of the Kobayashi Corporation, because it was right, and because it was about her after all, but only within reason. With these thoughts, I finally achieved my reward of slumber. 24/09/1987. I was always annoyed by my hesitation in deciding whether I continued sleeping in or not. If only people could consciously switch themselves off to rest. Dreams, dreams. But after lying in bed for at least an hour, unable to decide whether to get up or not, I eventually fell asleep. Again? And in my dream, I got into a real epic novel with a complicated storyline, a detailed world of backstory, a plethora of characters, each with a unique and complicated personality. Yet this entertaining spectacle was still interrupted by Kagome's call. Nikolai, time to get up. Nikolai? It's surprising how the same action can cause a very different reaction depending on the situation. I often grumbled at Mitsu for waking me up, but deep inside I was glad about it. Meanwhile, her wake-ups irritated me more and more with each day. Why the hell are you even talking about school after what happened yesterday? So you aren't going? Give me a minute to get dressed. Maybe just a minute. There was no time for breakfast. In line with that, I'd taken what seemed to be the coward's choice, agreeing with their mediocre arguments. At this point, any excuse I could come up with wouldn't be any better than a drunk driver's after hitting a pedestrian. What do we do next? With what? You know what I mean. With Kobayashi? We'll leave a note with our demands, like it says on the first. They didn't expect the first note, but this time they're definitely gonna be on high alert. Which is why you'll have to be the one to leave it. Oh yeah, of course. I wasn't even surprised. Do you actually think I won't get caught? You'll come up with something. I believe in you. We're already close to school. Aren't you afraid we'll be seen together today? I think we have more important problems to worry about. Well then. Do you mind if we walk like this? Now this is too much. What's come over you? To distract me, would walk to school hand in hand, leave me alone with that thought, is like confirming its legitimacy. A common cause brings people together. A common crime, I said, almost whispering. Have you decided what are you gonna demand? I don't want to press her. Besides, I doubt he'd risk his granddaughter's life. I think you're the one at the greatest risk. Oh, we're here already. Well, Nikolai, I've got stuff to do before classes. See you later. I walked to our classroom and sat behind my desk. The other kids seemed to be very agitated. It's not like a person gets kidnapped every day, at least some no less. Except the thought that it was Kawashima and Asakura's fault. None of them knew who the mastermind really was. I did though, and now is our accomplice. Of course, I could reason that I was just a victim of the circumstances. But ask those who are without sin to throw the first stone at you, and you'll definitely receive with more than one rock to the forehead. But if we were caught and taken to court, whether it was swift revenge from Kobayashi or protracted investigation within the Japanese judicial system, none of these arguments would help me. I have a feeling we're gonna need to help the KGB. Just a bit. I'd always believed that the needs of the majority eventually prevail over the minority of a struggle. But at this moment, I was one of the bosons that formed the field, one of many but still unique to myself. I could acknowledge the superiority of moral norms and laws as I wanted, while not facing them personally, not presented with a difficult choice. But right now, I had zero desire to act like a homo socialis or conform with other people's theories and my actions. My conscience was still nagging at me. I'd never been in this situation before. I could only rely on the experience of characters from books, novels, and authors. Besides, we hadn't murdered anyone. We were just gonna hold her hostage until her grandfather released Kiyomi's father. If I kept trying to find excuses for what I was about to do. Classes went by casually, although I couldn't care less about the teachers and their lectures. 6 hours weren't enough to come up with anything resembling a sensible plan, so I waited for Kagome at the gate with a sense of dread. Finally, Kagome walked out of the school, and I immediately darted off, not waiting for her. Nikolai, wait. She caught up and walked alongside me. So, have you come up with a way to leave the note? Haven't you thought that we might be watched? It's one thing to sneak in the heart at night, but showing up at Kobayashi Corporation's headquarters in broad daylight is something else entirely. Then maybe we should drop it in the post box. Even better. There's at least other people in the city at that time of day, but we'd be completely alone there. Not we, you. Yes, and I still can't get why you bestowed me with that honor. It's not like I have any special skills to handle it. Anyone can bring a note, Nikolai. And then it dawned on me, yes, anyone. Kagome gave me a questioning look. It doesn't have to be you or me. Expensive car passed by honking at someone. Who then? We can find a homeless guy, just give him some money. And if he gets caught, the most he can say is some young people paid him to pass a note. There's a lot of young people in Tokyo. Not many like you. Kagome smiled meaningfully, even then. And that's yet another reason not to involve me, because there are indeed few taller Europeans in Tokyo than... I took Kagoge from head to toe and didn't finish. Fewer than who, Nikolai? You know what I mean. Fewer than there are short Japanese girls? Is that what you wanted to say, Nikolai? Calm down, I'm just joking. You came up with a good plan, so I agree. We need to change our clothes. Our school uniform with its distinct color would narrow down the number of suspects. But you wear this outfit everywhere, Kagome. That is not a good idea. But I no longer care. Just ahead of me, I could see the success of the operation and Ellie's prompt release. After all, the sooner we let her go, the forgivable our crime. It's too late to back out. Hurry up before I change my mind. It wasn't that easy to find a homeless person in the center of the Japanese capital at the end of the 20th century. But the lack of a choice, in a way, made my task easier. I took the envelope out of Kagome's hands and said, "Wait here. What is a Japanese hobo even supposed to look like?" Maybe this will come in handy with my memory. I try to remember when I last saw someone like that, but nothing came to mind. It's uncommon to beg for money or build a house out of cardboard in Japan. Then I realized my plan had begun to fail, along with the hope that it would be released soon. My legs finally felt heavier. Each step taking a bigger effort than the previous one. I turned around and looked for Kagome, who's patiently observing me. A failure witnessed by another person is a failure doubled. And then several children around 12 years old, by the look of them, ran at me shouting happily. I reacted before the thought was fully formed and could be put into words, and grabbed the girl last in line by the arm, freezing in place. Oni-san, what are you doing? Want to make some cash? I barely managed to force out. What do I gotta do? Nothing. Will see this letter? You need to bring it to the tall building, pass it to the woman at the reception desk, and that it's given personally to Kobayashi-jun. Because I kidnapped a person, and the letter has demands for their release. Seriously? Absolutely. Dang, this is so cool, I'm in. Here, take this. That's for your work. Kids are cruel. I handed her several folded banknotes. Alrighty. The girl took them and ran off to a friend standing nearby who'd been cautiously waiting for the outcome of our conversation. I see your plan. You changed your plans on the fly. She was, as always, unhappy about something. I improvised. Time to go. After we walked a couple of blocks away from the building, I finally stopped to catch my breath. Are you sure she did everything correctly? No, but I don't want to check. You don't need much time to open a letter, read it, and call security. Yeah, I guess. Kagome looked very satisfied with herself. Nikolai? Kagome looked at me in surprise. Work's done. Have your fun. Stars don't spend a load of effort on an ineffective processing of matter of energy, but convert the elements into their cores directly. People, on the other hand, have to wait hundreds of million years for dinosaur fossils to turn into oil and gas. Hunger, as always, had pushed the other thoughts to the background. I didn't know what would happen to my life next. Would I have to meet Ellie, who I believed had a hand in kidnapping, every day at school? Meet her, greet her, give her a cute smile, and strike up some small talk? It was hard to imagine such a thing was possible, but that wasn't even the main issue. Please call grandfather over for dinner. All right. You seem happier than anything could happen. Nothing much. Her reply annoyed me, and I had a hard time hiding it. Does this all seem funny to you? What does? All this, you know what I mean. I don't. And then he realizes it's pointless to argue because he or she will inevitably do whatever they want. Moreover, you feel you can't help but respect something like that, no matter what their motives and objectives are. Naturally, it was weird that a normal Japanese girl was making me think that. Kagome, I've totally forgotten, but have we called Auntie Noriko? We have. So what did she say? She said they were still renovating the house. I knew the conversation indirectly involved me as well, as renovating the house might mean they had nowhere to go at the moment. It would be impolite to say to start arguing in front of Moriaki-san, is that so? But it really wasn't a good time to go over to Kagome's housing prospects. It was probably even dangerous to send Iwamura and her grandfather to live somewhere else before we resolved the matter with Ellie. Nikolai? What? It appears to me that you wanted to say something. When things start to appear to you, cross yourself. That's the saying we have in Russia. We finished dinner, but the vague feeling of an oncoming catastrophe was only growing stronger as night approached. Kagome was doing her homework, sitting behind the kokatsu, while I walked back and forth looking for something that could distract me from my disturbing thoughts. Stop running around the place, she said without a hint of anger. Sorry, I don't have your cold blood. You left plenty of walking to do tonight. Tonight? Unless, of course, you think Kobayashi could use a diet. She smirked, clearly satisfied with herself. Ellie did indeed have to be fed, at least once a day. But the memories of yesterday made my head spin. Don't think I'm forcing you. You were handling it just fine on your own before. Are you that ashamed to be around Kobayashi? Well, you don't seem to be ashamed in the slightest. As if I would be. What you're doing is not only Ellie, it's unacceptable to do to any human being. We are doing, Nikolai. Does that make you feel any better, that you found an accomplice? We've already talked about that, Nikolai. Yet I still don't understand what you want from me. I want help. You promised to help, don't you remember? You always turn my words against me. What? Don't pay attention to what you say? It was getting more and more difficult for me to argue with her. I felt guilty about Ellie, scared for my life, but at the same time, I couldn't drop everything and put myself at Kobayashi Jun's mercy. And it just wasn't that I didn't believe he didn't have any. Maybe I want to help, but you make me do such things, and most importantly, you leave me no choice. You have a choice. I can just as easily go alone. Then why even ask? No reason, just by the way. So you aren't coming with me today? What have you got for her? Sure, I worked at a restaurant, but I'm not gonna make anything gourmet for Kobayashi. She'd be happy she isn't starving. If anything could be considered fine in this situation. I wish you were stuck in that warehouse for a day. There must be stuffy and hot as day and cold at night. Well, bring her a blanket. I said clearly without thinking. Hey, that's a great idea. Nikolai. Kagome realized what she'd done, but it was too late. It's not that cold there. Didn't it not bother you whether I went with you or not a minute ago? Fine. Don't forget a pillow too. Today, the trip to the abandoned warehouse came easier to me. Kagome was quiet all the way there, even avoiding looking at me. Not that I was eager to continue a pointless situation. Humans generally try hard as possible not to change what they believe, even if it goes against common sense. Huh, the song's called You Know, This Is the End. Nikolai? Kagome addressed me for the first time in the last hour. You look like you just seen a ghost. Well, if Ellie died there because of you, then here you go again. I had to go all this way. I realized I didn't want to be here at all. Sometimes the right choice takes too much emotional effort. It seems easier to bear with the condemnation for your cowardice. Do you understand you have to be consistent? You could have released Kobayashi right away, gone to the police, handed me over to the corporation, but you didn't do any of that. Yet you still keep self-flagellating over your conscience. It's your decision to please, for the love of all that's holy, find someone else to vent all your negativity at. Then why'd you drag me here? You came yourself. I was probably trying to transfer my guilt to someone else, and since there was nobody around her, I wasn't so much judging Kagome for kidnapping Ellie, as much as I desperately wanted to avoid being involved in it. You know what? Fine, you're right. Go. I'll wait here. Really? She was genuinely surprised. Yes. As you wish. Kagome said enter the warehouse, and it appeared like an expression of happiness flashed over her face for just a moment. Being here all alone, among these industrial ruins, wouldn't have been the most pleasant experience even under different circumstances, but just nearly. Ellie was suffering, tied up, couldn't help her, which made the entire situation simply unbearable. I couldn't. Why, actually? Who or what was stopping me? Kagome's argument was that we were in the same boat, and I was just as guilty as her. There's probably some truth to it, but wouldn't it be easier to do nothing then? The first choice of most living creatures is dangerous to pretend to be dead. I guess Kagome was right. I really wasn't consistent. I didn't know why or what to do about that. The night was cold, and every time I exhaled, a cloud of steam came out of my mouth. The stars seemed to have hid somewhere, and it suddenly appeared to me that the entire world had been squeezed in a giant box with a little bit of light finding its way from the inside. And I was just looking on its dark blue lid on which the little white dots were drawn. Kagome returned faster than I expected. Everything alright? You can go and check for yourself. I can, but I'm asking you. Everything's in order. You coming? The entire way back, I desperately wanted to know what Ellie had asked about me, but I anticipated Kagome's reaction, so I didn't say a word. When we reached the station, she said, "I'll call a taxi, wait here." I was shifting one foot from another, and that someone had intention to get me a happy end. Kagome returned for the telebus and shrugged. "Taxi will be here in half an hour. They said it's late, all the cars are busy." "I see." I interrupted her. "Don't you feel cold?" "Why? You want me to offer me your jumper?" My restaurant was very close to this place. Just recently, I thought I'd never get used to it, but now I already miss it. I wonder how my grandfather must feel. To be frank, Moriyuki didn't seem devastated by woe. Perhaps that was because he's no longer adequately perceived reality. We have to let Ellie go as soon as possible. What? We will as soon as they release my father. What if they don't? Or they do, but Ellie doesn't make it that far. Do you understand that there isn't a right and wrong solution? Sometimes every option is wrong, and we just have to accept the consequences. What do you mean by that? She asked coldly. I mean, we have to let Ellie go as soon as possible. Are you gonna do it now? No. I probably had at least 24 hours or so. All the time in the world wouldn't make the decision any easier. To do the right thing and put both me and Kagome in danger, we have to prepare. You can't be prepared for death. The taxi arrived after an hour, and by then, it had grown significantly colder outside. It was warmer in the car, but all the way home, I felt a side of beef in the refrigerator. When we finally reached home, Kagome immediately ran to the bathroom, but stopped in the doorway. "If you want to go first, Nikolai. Could it be that you're cold too, Iwamura-san?" I asked her sarcastically and slammed the door of my room much louder than I wanted to. My dream of treating myself to a warm bath wasn't fated much to become reality. My darling bed and duvet my parents had bought from Soviet sailors a couple years ago enveloped me in warmth I had so badly desired, but I still couldn't fall asleep. And if Kagome indeed was planning to drive his boat to the grave, I'd act on my own to avoid that. Except I didn't have the outlines of a plan. (25/09/1987). I was woken by Kagome's grumbling and immediately felt that I was sick. My head was burning and the surrounding world looked unreal. "I understand, but we still have to go to school. I'm sick." I moaned and turned to the other side, sick. "How did you manage to get sick?" "I'm not going anywhere. Get off me." I had to cover my head with a pillow in order to not hear her anymore. I probably should have taken the bathroom first yesterday. Anyway, Kagome decided not to argue and left me in peace. When I woke up again, the clock read 3 in the afternoon. My fever seemed to be gone, and I generally felt refreshed and rested. "Moriyuki-san?" I walked to the kitchen, no one was there. I opened the fridge looking for food and found a plate with tofu. I don't remember it being there. Had Kagome left me something to eat? Still, I was hungry, so I ate the tofu without a second thought. Even if I had a fever in the morning, it was miraculously gone. Maybe it was due to exhaustion and not hypothermia. The memories of the previous night started to come back one by one, like a bunch of disorganized memories. Why do decisions that seemed so simple the night before become absolutely unbearable in the morning? After I finished the tofu, I washed the dishes and paced around the kitchen. Would I be better off waiting for Kagome or acting on my own? Alright. If I decided to reach Delhi after all, what was I supposed to tell Iwamura? If things go completely wrong, they'd soon come for us. Kagome had the right to know, right? I was treating all these possibilities like they were something abstract, not directly concerning me. This was the only way I could maintain the determination to do what I had to do. To imagine what's happening isn't happening to you. What could be easier? It was getting late, but neither Kagome nor Moriyuki had returned. What if... The English thought, having once entered my mind, stuck there firmly, and I could no longer think of anything else. What if I was sleeping, Ellie had managed to escape somehow? Or the police, people from the corporation, or some random person had come across her, or the owners of the warehouse returned. Why had nobody come for me then? I dashed to the hall and grabbed my phone. Kyosuke told me Kagome sat through every class at school and left. Everything seemed to be in order. I looked at the yard, everything looked normal. But doubt had found its way into one's heart can be difficult to get rid of. According to the clock, only 5 minutes had passed, but it felt like a lot of things had run. I had to run right now, immediately. In a leap of panic, I leapt down the street and froze. But run where? Wasn't I being too hot-headed? But if Kagome and her grandfather had been captured, the longer I waited, the more danger I was in. I didn't know whether Ellie was still there. I carefully entered the back alley through the hole and walked across the station, constantly looking around. It wasn't that late, so the situation was occupied by a crowd of tired Japanese people. I was swept up by the flow and felt a bit calmer with all the hustle. When we arrived at the station, night had already descended upon Tokyo. I turned my collar up and walked towards the warehouses. Finding the right one without Kagome turned out to be no easy task. They all looked similar by default, and the darkness took it a step further. The warehouse looked exactly as it had been last time. I couldn't force myself to go in, as if something bad would happen. Huh. Complete darkness surrounded me as soon as I entered the warehouse. I fumbled in the darkness trying to find where she had been. The girl was asleep. I stopped, not knowing what to do. Wake her up or leave silently. I had achieved my objective. Found out Ellie was still there. Plus, I still felt ashamed to look in her eyes and had nothing to say to her. Ellie stretched and opened her eyes. Who's there? Nick, is that you? I first try not to breathe. I can see it's you. Maybe her eyes had adapted to darkness over these days. Are you alone without that crazy? I beg you. I know you aren't going along with her voluntarily. Untie me off the answer to my grandfather. We can forget it all here and now. Nobody will suffer except for her. Yeah, I didn't intentionally come here with the intention to free her. But really, I was almost sure I wouldn't find her. Unfortunately, it often turns like this. You go to do the right thing with a grim look in your face, but deep down, you hope everything's already been resolved without you. I knew I'd find you here. You. We almost got our way. We decided to mess everything up. What way did you get? Kagome stopped in the middle of the moonlight, wrapped her arms around herself and looked at me reproachfully. Nikolai? Immediately interrupted her. What have you been doing the whole day? Where is Mariki-san? I had things to do and grandfather was with me. Things? You understand what situation you're in, right? You could have left a note. I waited until evening and then you came here immediately. Yeah, because I thought you were captured, arrested. Or maybe you finally got an opportunity to free her. Kagome finally shifted her gaze to Ellie, actively demonstrating extreme disdain towards her. Hey, I'm still here, don't ignore me. Ellie somewhat calmed down. Why do I have to explain myself to you at all? Yeah, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I was thinking about it a lot. What were you thinking about? About yourself as usual, I suppose? Have you thought about my father, me, my feelings? Not all means can be justified by their ends. That's sophistry, Nikolai. You're trying to deprive someone of the only way they can fight back against injustice, justifying it with your old-fashioned ideas of morality. I really am happy you're in this too. This way you can at least understand some of my feelings. It's always easier to judge from the outside, when you're not the one who's to choose whether to give up or drown or try to struggle and reach the shore. But of course you, all of you have the right to judge what is right and what is not. What's right about the fact that everything went to crap after my mom died? I kept living like this, tolerating everything, not saying a word. Putting up with their gang, humiliating me. Others ostracizing me. What did I do to deserve that? Before high school, I wasn't better than anyone else, but I wasn't worse either. I had friends, acquaintances, a place in life, and then she suddenly broke into tears. I don't want to blame anyone for my mom's death, but sometimes it feels like someone has been punishing me with all this. And I could have waited patiently until graduation and then forgotten it like a nightmare, but I can't tolerate it anymore after they kidnapped my father. But why am I the only one who's to think about my own actions? Does she or her friends, their grandfather and his entire corporation? They don't need to answer to anyone, they're untouchable. And you, Nikolai, how do you act? You ended up taking my side on the victim's side, but you still came here too. And you're still playing by the rules. You blame me and yet you're ashamed of helping me. This is what they want. Why fight people if you can make them fight each other? They teach you what's good and what's bad. They teach you to think that things can be different. Was it a good act to kidnap my father? Well, just a corporation, as if that'd make anyone feel better. And if we can't hold them responsible, we just cowardly kept quiet and hide in a corner. Well, I don't want to and won't live like that. Can't you see she's not well in the head? Shut up. She shouted in response. You have no right to bully me, no right to take my place, no right to have Nico-san. Kagome kept talking at some point. It just became difficult for me to follow her into the flow of words, but I could clearly understand her mood and emotions. She suddenly gave me a piercing look that left no doubts about her sincerity. Kagome's eyes were gleaming with tears. I just wanted to test you. And you didn't hold it for even half a day. You immediately ran to her. To test me? For a moment, it seemed like you understood me, or at least you'd be able to. Over the past 3 years, I forgot to trust people. Unfortunately for a good reason, as it turns out. Huh. So Kagome deliberately took her grandfather with her and waited to see how he reacted. And I fell for this simple trick so easily. Maybe in a different situation, with a cooler head, I'd have questioned the soundness of Kagome's actions. But in the heat of the moment, the sincerity of her words seemed important. Don't listen to her. You're probably thinking you're doing the right thing, that otherwise you'll be eaten by your guilty conscience. Except doing the right thing doesn't entitle you to a reward. And my reward would be rescuing my father. So what? You think even after you get a want, you will get away with it? Your grandfather will never forgive you, and you can be sure you two won't have a life in Japan. He really does love his granddaughter. You surprised by that? How I'd love to change places with you, to see how you'd survive alone without money or status. At least I wouldn't kidnap anyone. Like your grandfather didn't kidnap my father, right? Or like your friends didn't burn my restaurant down. She looked at me. It's all about ifs again, Nico-san. You won't leave me here, Nick, will you? Ellie's voice was reaching deep into my heart, wounding it deeper than I could bear. But Kagome's monologue had planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Made me rethink what seemed so obvious. I'm not the one who started it. I shouldn't be the one to deal with it. My feet carried me outside by myself. Kagome hadn't come out after 10 minutes, and just when I began to worry, I heard her footsteps, and my accomplice walked out on the street with a grin on her face. Have you decided? Decided what? She's still there waiting for you. Hurry up. Kagome smirked past by me, resolutely walking away from the warehouse. Wait, I ran after Kagome. We were quiet all the way to the station, but I couldn't hold it. Don't you think that testing me like this isn't fair? But I achieved my purpose. I wanted to say he'd react in a different situation. And you, unfortunately, did everything I was afraid you'd do. I thought that you and Moriyuki had been captured. What else could I do? That's because... Why do I even have to explain myself to you? I understand, Nikolai. I'm not even accusing you of anything, you're right. Kobayashi's right too. Everyone is right in their own way in this situation, but I'm like a compass. I can't stay in flux. For me, the world's polar. I either put all into rescuing my father, or give up and accept my punishment. What's can I do? Go to the police, send a complaint to the prosecutor, or go to a national court? She laughed bitterly. You want me to obey their laws that they don't? For them, kidnapping a person is trifle, and yet you're ready to crucify me for it. I'm not going to crucify anyone. You don't understand that I've been facing a choice here. It's all or nothing. It's not even about being radical. They force these rules on me. I'd already noted that she was constantly talking about them, some disembodied figures. Obviously she meant the corporation. But you do realize that in the end, they are very real and specific people who suffer for it. And I'm not. I felt sorry for Ellie even now. But seeing Kagome like this, it was getting more and more difficult to emotionally assess her actions, judge her from the perspective of a civil society. I came closer, hugged this tired, trapped girl and pulled her close to me. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Why do you run to her first? Do everything so I'd hate you now and now. At long last, all the emotions I'd been suppressed by anger and wrath found their way out. It's not fair. I was hugging Kagome and looking overhead into the night. At the station, seeing the last trains leaving, and wanting this moment to last as long as possible. If not for Ellie and the corporation, we most likely wouldn't have met each other. The string of accidents that many people call fate. It brings completely different people together. Not just that, it puts them together in the same boat so they can only reach the shore through their combined effort. What about my feelings? I had turned Ellie down earlier. The choice now was between Kagome and common sense. Kagome or myself? You're asking me to do something I'd never done under different circumstances, and for a different person? What do you mean? If Kobe asked you to help kidnap someone, she wouldn't. You only think about yourself. If I really was, I wouldn't even be here for one. but I didn't say anything out loud and instead kept playing the role of Kagome's support. What are you planning to do next? Tomorrow. Kagome turned away, took a step back, wiped her tears, and shook her head. Tomorrow we'll act according to the plan. I hope you have one. Lucky it wasn't that late, so we made it to the station in time and didn't have to call a taxi. I really didn't want to sit next to Kagome for another hour or two. And we'll leave things off here. This episode is getting kinda long. I think we're reaching the climax of the story. I'm very interested to see what happens. Everyone seems to have a flaw, I think, so I wonder what the others are. Granted, won't be uploading those. I hope you all have enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. As always, goodbye.